Think about it. A muddy field in France, October 25, 1415. A small, exhausted English army, led by King Henry V, faces a vast sea of French knights on a swampy battlefield. The English are outnumbered nearly 4-1. The French are confident, no, arrogant. They are Europe's elite warriors, mounted knights clad in gleaming steel armor. And yet, at the end of the day, the French will suffer a catastrophic defeat. What caused this shocking outcome? Strategy, terrain, and the deadly English longbow. Welcome to the Ancient Civilizations channel. Today, we're looking at one of the most storied battles in history, the Battle of Agincourt. Let's rewind a bit. By 1415, the 100 Years' War had been raging for decades, a brutal struggle for the French throne between England and France. King Henry V, the ambitious young ruler of England, saw this war as his moment to claim what he believed was rightfully his. In August 1415, Henry led his army of about 12,000 men across the English Channel. They captured the town of Harfleur, but at a terrible cost. Disease and exhaustion had ravaged Henry's forces, and by the time they marched inland, his army was down to about 6,000 men, mostly lightly armored archers with longbows. On the other hand, the French were ready to crush Henry once and for all. They had assembled a massive force of 20,000 to 30,000 men, including thousands of heavily armored knights, the finest warriors in Europe. Confident of victory, the French blocked Henry's path to safety, forcing a confrontation on a narrow, muddy field near the village of Agincourt. Now, here's where things get interesting. Henry V knew his army was outnumbered and outgunned, so he resorted to strategy. The battlefield itself was his greatest ally. The area was narrow, surrounded by dense forests on both sides. This meant the French couldn't use their numbers to outflank the English. But it got worse for the French. The ground was soggy from days of rain, turning the field into a muddy quagmire. Heavy knights in full-plate armor would have had a hard time moving, let alone fighting effectively. Henry positioned his forces wisely. He placed his archers, about 5,000 of them, in a V-shaped formation on the flanks, with sharpened wooden stakes planted in front of them to repel cavalry charges. In the center, a small line of English men-at-arms and dismounted knights prepared to hold the line. This wasn't just a defense, it was a trap. At dawn on October 25, St. Crispin's Day, the battle began. The French knights, eager to crush the English, advanced, but that was their first mistake. Heavy rain had turned the battlefield into a pit of sticky, sucking mud, and the knights struggled to advance. The English archers, positioned safely behind their stakes, unleashed wave after wave of arrows. These were no ordinary arrows, each could pierce armor at close range. The English longbow was the deadliest weapon of its time, capable of firing up to 12 arrows per minute. Thousands of arrows rained down on the French. Horses panicked, knights fell, and chaos erupted. The narrow field worked against the French. As more men advanced, they collided with their fallen comrades, creating a traffic jam of bodies and armor. It was a horrible, muddy mess. Despite the devastating losses, the French pressed on. A second wave of knights advanced, determined to crush the English center. But they faced a relentless barrage of arrows and mud so thick that the men drowned under the weight of their own armor. By the time they reached the English line, they were exhausted and disorganized. Henry's small force of men-at-arms held their ground, fighting desperately hand-to-hand. Meanwhile, the English archer-shaving, run out of arrows, joined the fray. Armed with hammers, swords, and daggers, the archers charged the fallen knights, striking deadly blows at any who were still moving. It was a massacre. The French knights, overwhelmed and trapped, became easy prey. The brutality of the fighting broke French morale. Their vast advantage in numbers meant nothing as wave after wave fell in disarray. By sunset, the battlefield was silent. French losses were staggering. Between 7,000 and 10,000 men were dead, including many of their nobles and commanders. The English, they suffered fewer than 500 casualties. The victory was total and incredible. Henry V proved that superior tactics, the correct use of terrain, and disciplined troops could overcome overwhelming odds. The Battle of Agincourt became a symbol of English strength and determination. It showed that the age of the armored knight was ending, and that technology like the longbow was changing the way wars were fought. Henry V's triumph secured his place in history, inspiring plays, stories, and legends for generations. So what can we learn from the Battle of Agincourt? It wasn't just a fight between armies, it was a clash of strategies. The French relied on brute force and numbers, but the English relied on intelligence, discipline, and innovation. In the end, it was the longbow, a simple but deadly weapon, that shattered the myth of the invincible knight. History remembers the victors, and Henry V's victory at Agincourt has become the stuff of legend. If you enjoyed this analysis of these battles, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.